So, because we're gonna have, some number of people here are actually entrepreneurs. Some of them are planning on starting companies. What was is there anything in the financing process for early Netflix that lessons you learned that you would redo, like in terms of how you ran the financing?
So more relevant, I think. So let's see, I graduated in '88, worked at a research lab, worked at a networking company, worked at a startup that failed where I was just a hardcore engineer. And then I had an idea. And you really want to do the entrepreneurial thing when you have the right idea. There's no point of deciding, I'm going to do it this year with the best idea I've got. That you're probably going to have crap results. And so it's when some idea is just shaking you so hard that you'll go into poverty to see that idea materialized. And you just, the idea is really important to you. And then you change your life to become an entrepreneur to do the idea. Okay, and so the concept, whatever it is that you have, has to, and it's good to constantly be thinking about what could that concept be, but I would approach it that way. So my first company was funded 20 people, 20K a piece. So classic, broader family and friends and angel round. Only one or two semi-professional, no one close to Sam Altman or someone like that. And it was a little less developed, 20 years ago in the ecosystem. On that money, we were able to launch a product, get some initial traction, and then we got our first venture capital, which was the predecessor to Benchmark, Merrill Pickard, and Mayfield. And that worked out, I would say, very well. We got people that we trusted and really helped us grow the business. So I had an enormously positive venture capital experience in that way. And what you realize is many third-party like vendors and banks and things, they will screw with your company because they don't really care, but they care a lot about their reputation with your board members. And your board members, when they're venture capitalists, become the guarantor that you won't get screwed with. At least much less anyway.
Yep.
Because of their long-term reputation is with your board members, not with you typically. And so that's a big subtle value add. In Netflix's case, I could self-fund. I had done well enough on the first company, which got sold in '97, that I self-funded the first couple rounds. And so it's not relevant probably for, a typical situation. But nothing, I probably would have taken, in hindsight, we wish we had done more debt and less equity and, all the normal things that,
the prediction from success.
Yes, that's right.
Back, yes.
Nothing too dramatic.
Yeah. How about your first hires? How would you think about, because, you've now done this twice, both times successfully, once massively successfully. How do you think about the first 5 to 10 people? How do you think about doing that hiring? How do you run it?
It's people you want to work with, but you can't be afraid to change. You can't let friendship get in the way of professional judgment. So you've always got to be thinking, do I have the right team? And I owe it to the whole team, to the marketplace, to my investors, to myself, to do what I think is the right thing for the company. And when I was first a CEO, I'd never managed anyone, so I'd never written a review for anyone or anything, and because I was an individual engineer. And so I found a lot of those communication things difficult, and in particular, I couldn't possibly fire someone. It felt so cruel, it felt inhuman, and I just, it's like breaking up with a girlfriend or boyfriend or something, but worse, or, and so it felt awful because it was selfish, and, so it took me probably 3 years before I came to a view that I had, and the rest of the company was depending on me to do the right thing, and that it wasn't about me being selfish and pushing the person out. It was about me protecting the company. And once I could neutralize the value scales that way, I could comfortably say to someone, I'm sorry for this, but I think it's best for the company if we end your employment. And, once it was, and I think it's best for the company, I could get there. Now, many of you are probably more sophisticated, more mature. You've broken up with more partners, so it's easier for you. But you know, because it just takes practice, right? And we don't get enough practice in that.
Actually, there's a book I recommend to people, which I don't know if you've encountered, by Fred Kaufman called Conscious Business. And I'll get you a copy, but it's actually very similar, which is thinking about compassion and compassionate management. The compassion is not only to the individual, the compassion is to the company, the compassion is to the customers, the compassion is to shareholders. You actually have to integrate all of that compassion. Once you're doing that, that actually makes oh yeah, I understand this is painful for you, but actually, in fact, it's still a compassionate act. And that was actually one of the things I found really good in how Fred thinks about these things.
Yeah, and I think one part of compassion is a severance package because, you know, when you cut someone loose and, you know, it's a week or two of pay, it really can be difficult for them. But our minimum is 4 months and it goes up from there. So even if like 2 weeks in, we realize, you know, there's a mistake, as long as the person hasn't lied to us or something, you know, but we've made a mistake, they get a 4-month severance package. And that does a couple things. One is, you know, it makes the person feel better about it because they know that's, you know, it's material amount of money. And again, 4 months is the minimum. And 2, we get a legal release in exchange for that. And so despite the fact that we've separated from, 1,000 people maybe, we've never had an employee lawsuit because, you know, of this. And then 3rd, and most subtly, managers are really nice people. They're human beings and they're good with people, so they don't like doing mean things. And so you can think of the severance payment as like a bribe to the manager to do the right thing because it makes it easier.
Yep.
And without that, what they do is they put an employee on a performance improvement plan, and then the 2 of them go through this excruciating dance, you know, where that takes 2 or 3 or 4 months, and then they break up, but it's clearly documented. And that's just a lot worse. So that's why we avoid that and essentially buy out. And then the they'll take a month or 2 off and then they'll get snapped up somewhere.
Yep.